Okay, we're continuing in Hilchos Teshuvah, Rambam Hilchos Teshuvah, Parak Aleph. I hope you have a book. Makes it a lot more meaningful. And here the Rambam, I want to focus on Halacha Gimel, but I just want to do a quick review of what we learned. Maybe somebody remembers we spoke last time about 8 parts of Teshuvah. Let me review them. There's 8 parts that I know of that I've identified as the different halakim of Teshuvah, and I want to just go on into that for a few minutes today. But the first thing is Teshuvah itself, which has the advantage of just talking about regular Teshuvah. It's Zdoinos Nasik Ishkagos. Then, let's say Bizman Shabeis HaMikdash Hayakayim, there was a korban, and the Rambam speaks about Yisurim, Yom HaKippurim Mechaper, the Sarah Mishtaleach is Mechaper, Vidui is Mechaper, Dalad Misa Spaced Misa. Those are the 8 things, right? Philip, you want to give us back that? 8 in Yonim of Teshuvah.
Let me look at my notes. My notes. Korban, Yisurim, Yom Kippur, Sarah Mishtaleach.
Yeah.
Vidui, death, Teshuva.
That's 7.
I think I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 2 taps.
And Arba Mrs. Based.
I say, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Arba Mrs. Based. So there's 8. We spoke about it last week. 8 things that you have to do.
Why Misa twice? We have Dal Misa's based in and Misa. What's the difference between the two?
Misa's for everybody, but not Dal Mrs. Based if based in kills you. So there's certain Averos which are Chayav Arba Mrs. Based in. So based in curtails your life, and that gives you a kapara. And then for different Averos, Misa gives a kapara.
And it just sounded like Bechal Masaimana, like Misa would include, there are different manners of Misa, one of which is Dalad Misa's based in. So it sounded like this overlap, like one's including the other.
You mean Dalad Misa's based in includes regular Misa?
No, I was going to say the other way around. I was going to say Misa can manifest.
Let's say you die a Misas Nashika. So then you don't necessarily get a kapara for the Dalad Misa's based in. So that's what we're going to learn now, but I want to focus. Yeah, give me a minute, David. You're good. But let me focus a little bit on Halacha Gimel and try to understand what he's saying. The Rambam says, Bizman Hazeh, that nowadays, She'ein Beis HaMikdash Kayim ve'ein lanu Mizbeach Kapara. Nowadays, we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, so that obviates the Sarah Mishtaleach, it obviates the also the Dalad Misa's based in, but the Karbonos. Mainly, we don't have Karbonos nowadays. So what happens? Ein Sham Ela Teshuvah. The only thing left is Teshuvah. A Teshuvah mechaperes al kol ha'averos. We don't have a Beis HaMikdash. We can't bring a korban. So the Teshuvah is mechaper al kol ha'averos. Va'afilu Rasha, says the Rambam, kol yama v'asa Teshuvah ba'achreina. Even if a person acts like a Rasha all of his life, and v'asa Teshuvah ba'achreina, on the last day of his life, he does Teshuvah. Ein maskirin loy davar shum davar mirishai. When you come to Shamayim, if you did Teshuvah, we don't know what that Teshuvah is exactly. Ein maskirin loy shum davar mirishai. We don't. When it comes to Shamayim, he doesn't get reminded about his rishas. Shenamar rishas harasha lo yikoshel boy b'yom shuvay mirishai. Teshuvah. Yitzumay shel yoyim ha'kippurim mechaper l'shavim. Shenamar keb'yoyim hazeh yichaper aleichem. Okay, now there's 2 ways to read this Rambam. Let me just go straight into it. One way to read the Rambam is that Nebuch, we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, and we don't have Karbonos, and we don't have a Sarah Mishtaleach. The only thing left is Teshuvah, so we'll do the best we can. And we don't get the kind of treatment or kapara that we used to get. That's one way to read the Rambam. Ein sham ela tshuva, and he says before tshuva mechaperes al kol haver, and tshuva takes care of everything. The question, according to that, is why does he add v'tzuma shel yom hakippur mechaper l'shavim shenamer ki b'yom hazeh yichaper aleichem? So what does it mean, David? I did tshuva, so tshuva takes care of everything. Then he adds a piece v'tzuma shel yom hakippur mechaper. The Yom Kippur is also a mechaper. So what does that mean? Instead of tshuva or with tshuva? He just said tshuva takes care of everything. And there's a machlokes Rebbe in the Chachamim in the Gemara whether Itzuma Shel Yom HaKippurim is machaper or not machaber, but the halacha lamaisa it's not machaper without tshuva. So he just said tshuva takes care of everything. So what's Yom HaKippurim for? So it brings us to
maybe it means that all the things that are related to Beis Hamikdash, tshuva is fills in the gap. But the other things, Misa, Yom HaMisa still would obviously apply, I assume, as well. And Yom Kippur could be those things connected to Beis Hamikdash.
So go slowly here. First, he says, nowadays we don't have tshuva.
No Beis Hamikdash.
No Beis Hamikdash, rather, and no mizbeach. HaTshuva mechaperes al kol aver. So again, let me ask again. There's two ways to read this. One is, unfortunately, we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, so therefore, we're stuck a little bit, but maybe Yom Kippur does a little bit. And another way to read it is that no, it's not a nebuch. Nowadays we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, so everything got concentrated into the mitzvah of tshuva, and that takes care of everything. You don't need a carbon anymore. So dahainu b'zman shebeis Hamikdash yiyeh kayim. It doesn't take long to build a building nowadays. Mashiach could come today, and we can build a Beis Hamikdash, and we could start bringing karbanos. By next week, we could start building karbanos. Especially, it's going to be a siyata d'shmaya of Mizbeach Shalesh. So, do we have to bring karbanos for the averos that we did, or do we not have to bring karbanos for the averos that we did? So, if you say tshuva took care of everything, okay, to tshuva. If tshuva didn't take care of everything, then okay, I'm still chayav a carbon to get a final atonement for my averos. So you can really read this Rambam two ways, no?
Did the Rebbe mute people? There's some background noise.
Yeah, let me do that. Okay. Does everybody understand my question? A very, very extremely important question. Do we say now that the Rambam just told us for this, you need this kind of carbon, that kind of carbon, you need Sarah Mishtaleach, you need Yom HaKippurim. So that's still there, but what can you do? We can only do tshuva, and that's why we're davening for the Beis Hamikdash. Or is it the pshat that, no, that's not all we can do. That's everything. Everything was concentrated into mitzvah tshuva, which is mashma from the Rambam, tshuva mechaperes al kol averos. Nowadays, the tshuva is mechaper on everything. Right. Two ways to read the Rambam.
So what was the second way to understand it?
One way to read in other words, when you do tshuva nowadays, let me just ask the question more simply. When you do tshuva nowadays, is there something more we're supposed to do? Or something more that has to be done? In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, you did tshuva, you say vidui, you go to the Beis Hamikdash, you bring a carbon, etc., etc. Or there was Daled Misas based in. But nowadays, where we don't have all that, is tshuva take care of everything or no? Tshuva is the best we can do, but now at some point or another, we have to take care of everything else in some way or another. That's the question.
Can I ask just on the Lashon? It says Ein Shom Ela Teshuvah. What's Shom?
Right. So the Rambam says Sham in many places in the Yad HaChazaka, and he doesn't mean there. He means what the Rambam says. He explains in Mar Nevuchim that when he says Ein Sham, means in essence, like the lashon of Shuma, where you're figuring out what the value of something is. Sima. The place. In other words, it's the Ein Sham. He says this in Hilchot Teshuvah. He says it in Bias HaMashiach. He talks about this in a number of places. But Ein Sham Ela Teshuvah probably means like a lashon of there's nothing left but Teshuvah. There's nothing else. Everything goes into tshuva.
Nothing of significance.
Hmm?
Nothing of significance.
What are you saying? You're explaining the word sham?
Yeah,
How does it mean? How does it mean that?
that's what you.
I think the way to read it is ein lanu ela tshuva.
Mhm.
But which doesn't tell us much about what that does for us. Does that mean that's all that's left, or does that mean that's all we got to do? And but he says the next sentence that tshuva mechaperes hakol ha'averos. So take care of it. The tshuva takes care of everything. But then he says, and if you do tshuva b'achrona, even if you were a Rosh Hashanah, you took care of everything. You're all set. But then he says, v'tzuma shel Yom Kippur mechaper l'shavim, and Yom Kippur works. So what do you need Yom Kippur? I did tshuva. Elamai, you want to say it means Yom Kippur without tshuva? That's not true. The Rambam says in Furish that v'tzuma shel Yom is not mechaper without tshuva. That's later in Perek Zayin, I think.
The question of what is the relationship of the kapara of tshuva to the kapara of Yom Kippur, that question could stand in and of itself, regardless of the question of what do we do with or without a Beis Hamikdash. In other words, both of these points are in the same halacha gimel, but I could ask the same question even bisman shel Beis Hamikdash kayim. What is the kapara of tshuva relative to the kapara of Yom Kippur?
Right. And for that matter, you could ask on all 8 things. If you do this, what do I need that? If I do that, what do I need this? Right. So now in Halacha Daled, the Rambam in a way clarifies, but then mixes us up more. Because the Rambam says as follows. Apparently this is qualifying Halacha Gimel, yeah? Afal pi shemet tshuva mechaperes ala kol b'tzuma shel Yom Kippur mechaper, exactly the language of Halacha Gimel. Nevertheless, okay, but, that's like the biggest word in the vocabulary. But, nishtazei pasha. Yesh haveros, you got to look at what happened over here. Yesh haveros shein mischaprim l'shaiton, yesh haveros shein mischaprim l'achar zman. It's true that tshuva does everything in Yom Kippur is mechaper. And like you say, Pinchas, we could say, what do you need both for? But it's true that those 2 things work, but they don't necessarily work immediately. And here he starts quoting, he doesn't quote it, but here he's paraphrasing Rabbi Yishmael in the Gemara. Ketzad. The lashon of Rabbi Yishmael, if you recall in Yuma Daf Pei, is, and in Shavuos Yud Beis, Daled Chiluke Kapara Yesh. So he says as follows, Ketzad. Over Adam al mitzvahs essay shein bakaris v'asa tshuva. En izaz misham ad shemoichlon loi. Please keep track, write down, do whatever you have to do, but keep track of this because we can't. If a person's over an essay she'ein bakaris, somebody give me an example.
Putting on tefillin.
You don't put on tefillin, right? You don't put on tefillin, or you don't put tzitzis on your baguette, or you don't light Shabbos candles, or you don't make kiddush, okay? So all of these things, and we're talking about b'mezid here. Talking about b'mezid. I know I'm not gonna put on tefillin, right? So this is what he does. Avar adam al mitzvahs essay she'ein bakaris. You don't get karis for not putting on tefillin. Which mitzvahs essay do you get karis for not doing?
Pesach and Bris.
Korban Pesach and Bris. Very good. So I didn't do those things. I just didn't put on tefillin. So va'asa tshuva, and I'd feel bad. I did tshuva. I didn't put on tefillin. I do the whole process of tshuva. Says the Rambam, Einoi zaz misham ad shemoichlon lai. You get immediate, when you do tshuva, you get immediate kapara. Took care of it. We'll actually get to the pasuk soon, but let's just get the idea. The idea is first Avera class A. We had 8 types of tshuva. Let's get different types of Averas now. He did an essay she'ein bakaris. Okay, let's go further in the Chomer Hadavar. Avar al mitzvahs lois essay she'ein bakaris. For example, what? He ate basar b'challah. Okay, couldn't resist. Had a cheeseburger. So Avar al mitzvahs lois essay. says Mefurish Leisavashal Gediba Chalevi. You did an Isser Deraisa b'mezid, but there's no chorus for it. Veloy Misas based in. We don't kill him for that. It's not Chai Misa. Says the Rambam Ba'asa Tshuva, and you did Tshuva. I feel so bad, and I do Tshuva on the fact that I ate a cheeseburger. So now we don't say like we said before, Einoi Zaz Misham Ad Sheim Choloi. We say Tshuva Toila, good you did Tshuva, but now Yom HaKippurim Mechaper. You got to wait till Yom Kippur for this one. You have to do Tshuva.
But it says actually Yimchalai. It doesn't mention kapara over there. Over here, the second instance it mentions kapara.
Very, very good. Mashma, very, very good. Mashma that on an Isser essay, if you don't do a mitzvah essay, you need mechila. But now, once you need kapara, am I right, Yitzhak? Now that you need kapara, okay, now we've got a process, a tahalich. It's not as simple as it was before. And you need it not, of course, you need to do tshuva. Maybe that does, Yitzhak Halkov, maybe that takes care of the mechila, but it doesn't take care of the kapara. So now you got to get into Yom Kippur. So if you did a
question.
Yeah.
Yom Kippur is not mechaper on averot ben adam lemakom, only on averot ben adam laadam. And if you did it,
opposite. You mean
the opposite.
Yom Kippur is not mechaper on ben adam l'chaverei. It's only mechaper on ben
All
adam.
right. Okay. I retract the question.
Okay. Okay. So now, but you see what, as Yitzhak pointed out, so astute you are, that there's a difference between mechila and kapara. And once you need kapara, so mashma, like if you didn't put on tefillin, you don't need kapara. By the way, let's just explain it, balabatish over here, because it's not that you did something wrong. It's not like I infected my body or my neshama or something like that I need kapara to clean me out. I had an opportunity to do a mitzvah and I didn't do a mitzvah. Chaval. But so you have to do tshuva, but you need mechila for being not listening to instructions, but you don't need kapara because you didn't ingest any aver. Mashenkin, if you're over a loisa, say let it be shatnez, let it be achila, whatever it might be, or lashon hara. That's a number of losa says, right? So you do that. So now you need Yom Kippur. So somebody's going to ask you, what do we need Yom Kippur for if I could do tshuva all year round, right? So the answer is Yom Kippur tuzuv kapara for a loisa say she'ein bakaris. Let's go further. Over al krisos. So this is a prescription. I mean, you need to know what you're doing here. So on Yom Kippur, we're taking care of loisa say she'ein bakaris. Let's say over al krisos umisas beistin. Okay, what's krisus?
Big 36.
So that one has intimacy with a nida or with an eshes ish or eats chametz on Pesach
Or chaylev.
or chaylev, etc. 36, as you say. So if one does that, so now what happens? What's the process? Tshuva. First of all, you always have to do tshuva. So tshuva you do ala makom, hopefully. But tshuva toila, the language is so interesting, language of the Gemara. The tshuva hangs in there. The Yom HaKippurim mechaper. I lost it. I'm sorry. Overall, Krisim is based on tshuva. Tshuva v'Yom HaKippurim toilim. Sorry, I was reading the wrong line. Tshuva together with Yom Kippur. You go through tshuva, you go through Yom Kippur, and you're not off the hook. What do you still have to have? You're not off the hook. Everything different than what we've been told all our life. Tshuva v'Yom HaKippurim toilim v'Yisurin haboyin alav goimrim loya kapara. Days are hanging in there. They're in your cheshbon. You did tshuva, you went through Yom Kippur, very good. But you're not finished with your kapara. Let's call the kapara the cleansing item. And therefore, you need Yisurim, God forbid, Yisurin haboyin alav goimrim loya kapara. Now, just because everybody just got like a knot in their stomach, I just want to say that this is talking about if you're over a loisa, say, sheyesh bakaris, one of those things that have karis, which I'm presuming most of us on the screen don't do. But if somebody was over a loisa, say, sheyesh bakaris, so now you have to have Yisurim, no way out, and Shuva and Yom Kippur and Yisurim. And I mentioned last week that if you have just Yom Kippur or just Yisurim, it's not helpful. It's not mashmauti, and you don't get the kapara chaval. So, like the tshuva has to be with kavana. I'm sorry, that the Yisurim have to be with kavana. So somebody does a loisa say sheyesh bakaris. What about an essay sheyesh bakaris? Like you don't do a bris milah?
It doesn't draw a distinction.
Right? Just says over al krisus and mesus basin. Same thing is, so somebody doesn't do a bris milah, but dafka b'mezid. No, I don't want to do that. You know, so you have to have yisurim. Well, okay. Or let's say somebody killed somebody, so you're chayiv arba misus basin, or you worshipped avodah zarah. So no choice. You have to do tshuva. You need a Yom Kippur in there. Salach tikit varecha. And you also need Yisurim. You see, I just want to throw something in here, which is significant. You know, we've all learned this, and I mentioned this, I think, on Shabbos at some point last week. But you find like the stira by the Maisa Ha'egel. Because by the Maisa Ha'egel, we messed up big time. Klal Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai and advocated for the Jewish people, and presumably we did tshuva. And Hashem said, "Salachti kidvarecha." Nevertheless, so that's it. Avodah Zarah. Yom Kippur was invented over there on Har Sinai. Salachti kidvarecha. That was on Yom Kippur. And the Chayr were okay. Yet you find the Gemara says over and over again, Avodah Zarah Daf Zayin and Krisos, the Gemara says over and over again that the Chet HaEgel, the onesh for the Chet HaEgel appears in every generation. Hello, we're done with that. Not only was it a long time ago, but it was a few thousand years ago. It was different generations, different people. You know. So why does it keep on reappearing? So the answer is that there's another thing you have to do. There's tshuva, there's Yom Kippur, which Moshe Rabbeinu accomplished, Salach Tikid Varecha, and then there's Yisurim, Garmin Aloya Kapara. Ula Olam Ein Meschaper, Rambam emphasizes this, Ein Meschaper like Kapara Gemura Achiyavayu Alav Yisurim. Ube'ela Namar Upakadati B'Shevet, I will get you with my stick, ubenagoyim, or with illness, avoinam. Opakalati b'shevet pisham, ubenagoyim avoinam. Makes a distinction in the pasuk between a pesha and an avoin. Okay, but it gets worse. Odyoter. Bamed varmamurim b'shalei chilas Hashem b'shasha avar. Now we're not talking about chil Hashem like we say it in the vernacular. It means that not only you do an Aveira, which is Chayiv Kares, B'Seiser, but you're proud of it. So Mela, like, you know, I do that. You know, so let's say a person eats chametz on Pesach in public, B'Shat Nefesh, so that's a Aveira Sheyesh Kares, and he's doing a Chil Hashem B'Shasha Avar. Amachalas Hashem Afal Pisha Asa Tshuva. V'Yigia Yom HaKippurim. Who I made b'tshuvasai. He's still doing tshuva. All his life he's doing tshuva. And he said Yom Kippur. And uval of Yisurim, and he's having Yisurim. Eino mischaper like kapar gemurah sheyamos. For that you need Yom HaMisa. Ela tshuva, Yom Kippur, Yisurim, shloshtan, toilin, umisa mechaperes. Shenamar v'nigla ba'aznei Hashem tzvakos mechuper oven azelachem ad tamusun ad kan parak aleph. So let's just get it for a few minutes here. The Rambam and Halacha Gimel, breath of fresh air, relief. Tshuva basically takes care of everything, and what Tshuva doesn't take care of, Yom Kippur takes care of. But now he's saying, Nishtazai Pashut, it's true, and I'll use Rabbi Yitzchak's vart here. It's true that the Tshuva takes care of all the mechila that you're needed, apparently. But listen, you did a loisa seishiesh bakaris with a chil Hashem. So now you're not going to cleanse yourself or the world of that until you have Tshuva, Yom Kippur, Yisurim, Yom Hamisa. Sounds like from this Rambam that then you're clear. So we don't have to suffer in the afterworld as long as you did Tshuva, Yom Kippur, Yisurim, and Yom Hamisa. That's a pretty rough life. And all of it has to be b'kavana. So, and it all works. In other words, it's just, let's just say one more time. When you're over an Isser essay, Eino Zaz Misham. Right away you get kapara. By the way, this explains the egel, because in other words, the egel, it's true that Hashem said, Solachti kidvarecha amoichoyu, but you still need a kapara for such a thing. And the kapara takes generations to. So before we go further, is everybody?
No, slicha mechila.
The kapara.
No, slicha mechila are two different things.
Yes, one's on one kind of a chet, one's on another kind of a chet. So it's a new kavanah here. But so Philip, just say it again. What is Yom Kippur going to help us this year?
Yom Kippur it's for lo sasa bakaris.
Lo sasa she'ein bakaris.
Even ein bakaris. That's Yom Kippur.
So you're right and you're wrong, because Yom Kippur helps for everything, but it doesn't. It's not goimrim loyis hakapar. You need a Yom Kippur. So Yom Kippur helps for everything, just like Teshuva helps for everything, but you're not out of the woods yet until we have Chas v'Shalom, Yisurim, and if it had a Chil Hashem with it, Yom HaMisa. So the only time you need a Yom HaMisa to be Mechaper, it would seem, is if you did a Loisa say, Sheyesh Ba Kares, with a Chil Hashem, B'Shas Maisa. What about, let's just test our knowledge, what about a Losa say She'ein Ba Kares with a Chil Hashem?
So you don't have that many preconditions, but it's still not gonna. It's still not. You're not gonna get your kapara until the day you die.
Losa say she'ein bakaris. So the guy,
Right, because
if he made a chil Hashem while he's doing it, he's sitting in public and he's proud of eating his cheeseburger in public.
Because the definition of chil Hashem at the end of the halacha, the Rambam applies that to all of the averos.
Agree, right.
So you might in your lifetime, even within the same week, have fulfilled the other necessary conditions for kapara, but because there was an element of chil Hashem in it, it's not going to. Everything is going to be tole. Everything is suspended. The final kapara is suspended until the day you die.
Right, but it's only talking about if you did a chil Hashem b'shas haveira.
Right.
But is it talking about mitzvahs aseh or mitzvahs lo with that Torah also? Because it's not serious. I don't know if that's on the third one.
So as Pinchas just said, it sounds like even if you're over an essay, you don't put on tefillin with a chil Hashem. So you need the Yom HaMisa.
What's everyone's going to die.
Yeah, but you have to have kavanah. You have to have kavanah.
That's where Gehenna comes in, I guess.
Yeah, the whole Gehenna thing is not in Hilchos Teshuvah because we're talking about somebody doing Teshuvah. This is the importance of doing Teshuvah. That's why the Gemara says, La'olam yilbash adam levanim. Yashuv adam yoyim echad lefnei misasai. Shein adam yodeya masayama. So it's a Gemara. You should always wear white, meaning wear a kittel and do tshuva, because a person should do tshuva one day before they die. And you don't know when you're going to die, so you should be doing tshuva all the time, so that the Yom HaMisa, that's the pshat, and so that the Yom HaMisa will be machaper at least, and then you're finished with it.
Are you distinguishing between a Chil Hashem done at the same time one is doing a mitzvah and a Chil Hashem that's just done stam?
That's what I just said, that as far as I could read the Rambam, Lo Barur, that even if a person is over on an essay and makes a Chil Hashem while they're doing this, so that's called an Isser essay, like you don't put on tefillin b'shat nefesh, right? No, I'm not going to put on tefillin. And you make a Chil Hashem while you're doing it, so I think you need the Yom HaMisa for that also.
Oh, okay, but you didn't say if I do a Chil Hashem without a mitzvah, it's different.
It doesn't say that.
Right, okay, but
The only thing a little shver on that reading is it does go through Alpha Bishas Teshuva Yom Kippur V'Omed B'Teshuva Ubayla V'Sorim. Those are the three things that mentioned under all the way to Karas. Why is he? It sounds like it's sort of the fourth level,
Right.
just on the ones who did Chorus and Mrs. Bastin.
Well,
I
think
don't know
the-
why it sounds like tshuva, but if you did Avol Hamachalas Hashem, Avol Pisha Asa Tshuva.
There, it's not clear whether it's 1, 2, 3 or just 3.
Well, he
But the-
leaves out the part B'Shas Avera, you see. Let's go one line further. Let's just learn it again. So notice that B'Shas Avar, underline that in your head. Avol Hamachalas Hashem, he should have just said now B'Shas Avar. Avol Hamachalas Hashem, Avol Pisha Asa Tshuva V'Giv Yom Kippurim V'Oyim B'Tshuvasai. Ubalav Yisurim, he did everything, and it was chaper like Kippur Gemara, Ad Shiyamulas. So, okay, so it could be that he deletes those words to include an Isser Essay. But let's get the main point over here. The main point is that where the Rambam in Halacha Gimel tells us that Tshuva takes care of everything, it does take care of everything, he says, but it's Tola. It's just being part of it. It takes care of everything, and you need Tshuva for everything. If into Tshuva, you're cooked. But the tshuva sometimes works immediately, but once you start adding into that loisa say or arba misas bastin or kares or chil Hashem, there's much more to the process. Either Yom Kippur Yisurim Misa, and God willing, if you do tshuva on anything, and there's Yisurim, which is a tough one to think about. And there's Yisurim, and there's Yom Kippur, and there's Yom HaMisa. So you set, you die tzaddik. Anyway, all this, I just want to make it clear to you. All this is talking about Mazid. Just to be 100% clear. We're talking about not somebody who did something b'shogeg or didn't realize. We're talking about b'mazid. Darfus investor. So, which to me, by the way, in other words, like, we always talk about like the Baal Tshuva movement, that kind of Baal Tshuva, the sociological Baal Tshuva. So, somebody, a man or woman, does an Aveira. Presumably they didn't know that they were chorus, even if they knew it was wrong. Somebody had an affair on their wife or something. So, or a woman has an affair on her husband, even worse. So even though they didn't know they knew it was wrong, but they didn't know it was kares. So the Rambam in Hilchos Krisos says that's also not called mazid.
It's not mazid?
No, it's not called mazid unless you know the onish.
Unless what?
You know the onish.
Wow.
It's a big
When one gives hafra, when the Edom give a warning first, they have to tell you the onesh.
Nachon. And if they don't, it's not hasra. So this makes me want to say, let's not talk too much about what your chayiv kar is, because once you know. But the truth is, we're in a safe group over here because Baruch Hashem, nobody's over Aver Sheish B'Karis. But if somebody is chas v'shalom knows that it's karis and it's baal ishto nida b'mezid, I just don't care, So then you're archai of karis. Presumably, it's not a chil Hashem, but you need so you need what do you need in such a case? One would need Teshuva, Yom Kippur, and Yisur. Now, I have 5, 6 more minutes, 7 minutes. I just want to throw out something here. Let's look into this idea for a minute. Now the Rambam says now that the Beis Hamikdash is not Mekayim. Remember the first question I asked? Like, is Teshuva do more now? What like it doesn't say a word about karbanos here in this whole halacha dalet. So it sounds like you're good, yeah? Like with all these things, there's not a word about karbanos, no Beis Hamikdash, no anything, right? So the Gemara says, there's a Gemara in Yuma Daf Pei. Listen to this Gemara. Ha'oichel chelev bezman hazeh. Okay, chelev is just the classic treif, right? Ha'oichel chelev bezman hazeh. Tzarech sheyichta. Talk about b'mezid, I presume, or maybe not. Tzarech sheyichtov loy shiur. You should write down how much you owe. Keep a spreadsheet on this. Shemayavoi based in acher v'yirba b'shiurim v'loy mechayev adika kazayis gada. Well, the Gemara. The Gemara says, takes as a davar pashut that a person's oichel chelev b'mezid, you're going to have to bring a carbon. The Gemara says a shtickle over here that write down, like in other words, just look at the kazayis index for today that we did this avera, and now you're chayev a carbon. This size, this is what you have to give, this how much, whatever, the carbon is a carbon mincha, this is how much you have to give. Why should you write it down? Because that way you've committed yourself to something, and when the chazanish comes around and tells you, no, kazayis is not like this, or kazayis is like that, you don't have to turn around and bring a bigger carbon now. In other words, let's say I ate a kazayis chelev. So did I eat one kazayis chelev? Did I eat two kazayis chelev? Well, according to the chazanish, I only ate a half a kazayis, according to Rav Chaim. So just write it down. The day that this is what Klal Yisrael is holding right now, that's what you have to bring a carbon on. But what do we see? And the Gemara also says that Rabbi Yishmael, and this was talking about 40, 50 years after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. But the Gemara says that Rabbi Yishmael wrote down his Averis. That he's going to bring, in other words, he kept a cheshbon, Rabbi Yishmael, holy Rabbi Yishmael, he kept a cheshbon of every Avera that he did, so that when the Beis Hamikdash is built, he could bring a carbon. Zetmendach, what does he have to bring a carbon for? First of all, the Rambam says now that there's no Beis Hamikdash, everything's all set. And even if you want to say you need Yom Kippur and you need Yisurim, even one needs a Yom HaMisa, but then you're all set. So what do you need a carbon for when the Beis Hamikdash comes? So the mashma from the Gemara very, very clearly that you still need the carbon. Everybody hear my kasha? Yes or no?
Maybe you could repeat it.
The kasha is that according to the Rambam, halacha gimel and halacha daled, you're all set. If somebody doesn't have eir b'mezid or b'chatos or b'shoigeg, and
there's no Beis Hamikdash.
There's no Beis Hamikdash. You need Teshuva, Yom Kippur, Yisurim, Yom HaMisa. That's the maximum sentence. What happens on the Yom HaMisa, I don't know, never been. But, That's what you need, 4 things. But the Gemara says, and it's a Mefurish Gemara, and it's brought lahalacha even, that it's brought even a halacha in Shulchan Aruch, that no, you have to write down and keep track of your Averis so you know what to do when Mashiach comes. And there's a Beis HaMikdash.
He hasn't died yet, that's why. So he hasn't died. So he hopes the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt. Then he's got to bring his carbon then.
Yeah, but the Yom HaMisa you only need for Averis Sheish B'Chil Hashem, which Rabbi Yishmael didn't do.
Oh,
Okay, a person needs chaylev. The case of the Gemara. A person needs chaylev b'mezid. Rabbi Yishmael, or Rabbi Lazar. He does tshuva, has yisurim, and he does it, and he does tshuva, yisurim, and Yom Kippur.
You missed. What I'm saying is that he's hoping, we're all hoping, the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt. Once the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt, then there is a Beis HaMikdash. Then we have to bring a carbon.
Oh, that's what you mean. I'm sorry, I didn't get your point. I actually thought you're making a more lumdish point. That like it's felt. No, it's a feltum and Yom HaMisa.
Yeah, it could be as that as well, but but no, if there's no.
So you're saying like if if the Beis HaMikdash gets built, then
the carbon will come back.
We're odapam chayev.
Yeah, for carbon.
Okay. Even if I did tshuva and I had yisurim and I had a Yom Kippur, because now I'm chayev in a carbon for that same aver. Okay.
Were we saying as far that this is the carbon takes care of what otherwise Yom HaMisa would have to take care of?
So I think that what the way this works, and maybe like next Thursday we'll prove it in the Rishonim because there's nothing more important than all this. But I think that the carbonos take care of the yisurim. I know that you always have to do tshuva. You always have to say vidui. You always need a Yom Kippur. Now, Toilah.
It's 10 o'clock.
If there was a Beis HaMikdash, you bring a carbon with good kavana, and it takes care of it. Nowadays, right? We don't have a carbon to bring. So it's not that I get a new chiyuv. Now I have to have the yisurim b'mkoim the carbon. So we want Mashiach now. In other words, like what it means to say is the yisurim that come about because of an avera, dahainu, a loisase, b'mezid, those yisurim could be taken care of with a carbon. What I'm telling you right now, the Shulchan Aruch Harav says. So it means to say that there's 2 choices. One choice is yisurim, and one choice is carbon. If there's a carbon, there's no yisurim. If there's yisurim, there's no carbon. And I'll just end off with, why would that be? Because the Ramban says in Vayikra, the beginning of Vayikra, the Ramban explains, he argues with the Rambam actually, but I don't know if they're arguing about this. He explains that when a person brings a carbon, ish ki yakriv mikem carbon. So when a person brings a carbon, the situation is that he puts himself bimkom the carbon, and he watches all the different avodas that are done in the carbon. And therefore, not only does he do tshuva, but he's like that's really like, and he imagines all this happening to himself by Yom Adin. And Mamela, the carbon takes care of the yisurim, like you have the yisurim already. So you could say it according to what I'm saying, and just keep this in mind. You could have Bizman shebeis hamikdash kayim, Bizman she'ein beis hamikdash kayim. Bizman shebeis hamikdash kayim. So you have to have tshuva always. You have to have Yom Kippur always, and you have to say vidui always. But then you bring a carbon First of all, the Kohen Gadol brings a Seir Mishtaleach for certain Averis. And if I did an Avera b'meisid, I bring a carbon. Asham, if there is a carbon. If there is a carbon, there's not a carbon for everything. But for what there's a carbon, I bring a carbon, and now I don't have to have Yisurim. And for Chil Hashem, by the way, the carbon doesn't help you. There is no carbon for Chil Hashem, so therefore you still need the Yisurim and you still need the Yom Hamisa. But what the carbon would take care of, I think, is the Yisurim and the Yom Hamisa. So right now, a person sees Yisurim, they say, okay, Yifashvesh b'maisav, and figure out what Averas Loisa say I did, b'meisid, that's bringing these Yisurim, and have Kavanah. As I said last week, don't let it go by, have Kavanah. You're not going to do much about the Yisurim, but at least you can have Kavanah. What you do if you see Yisurim, Lanias Daiti, is go to the Beis HaMikdash and bring Karbanas. So I was thinking that, let's say, Philip's case. Let's say I did an Avera, Loisa say, B'mezid, went through Yom Kippur, I did Teshuva, I really did do Teshuva, and I had Yisurim. So now do I have to bring a carbon or not? Yes or no? Am I still chayiv in a carbon or not?
Well, to what you just said, no.
So I'll tell you here a secret that the pshat is when Mashiach comes, Eliyahu Navi is going to come and tell you whether you had Yisurim enough for that Aver or not. Or whether you're chayiv a carbon or not chayiv a carbon. So he's going to, standing there at the scene, like, okay, Tavar, not Tavar, you need to bring a carbon still, you have a cheshbon, right? The massive computer in Shemayim is going to be downloaded to Eliyahu Navi, and he's going to know, which is a thought unto itself. There's a number of things, by the way, just to sum it up. Number one is this, the understanding and the emunah of just 50, 60 years after the Beis HaMikdash that Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Kiva had to write down their averas. We have to bring a carbon, like just such an amazing thing to think about. But the second thing, which is a bit scary, is that Eliyahu Navi, Rabbi Yosef Engel brings this in Shabbos Yud Beis. Eliyahu Navi is going to tell people whether you had enough Yisurim or you still chayiv a carbon. It's like, the vaccinations. Do you need a booster carbon or not? And the other thing is that Be'ezus Hashem, once the Beis HaMikdash comes, so we'll be patur from the Yisurim that come with an Avera, because the carbon itself becomes the Yisurim. And this is all going to be for past Averas, because presumably we're not going to do Averas anymore once Mashiach comes. But okay, am I clear? I just want to make sure.
Yeah. Well, can I ask? I mean, this is really a very intriguing question about out of the list of the 8 things, what did the Korban replace in the Zman Beis HaMikdash HaKayim, and what will it replace L'Asid Lavo? But if according to the Rav's Cheshbon, it's true that it replaces Yom HaMisa, I mean, Yom HaMisa is farther down the list than Yom Kippurim Atzmo.
I didn't say it replaces Yom HaMisa.
Oh, no.
I said it replaces Yisurim. Yisurim. So that I found in the Rishonim, that the carbon replaces Yisurim.
But once again, in that list, isn't Yisurim after Yom Kippur?
Yeah, for the rest of your life.
So then I could ask, if it has the koch to replace the Yisurim, then it's certainly Korbanos have the power to replace Yom Kippur. Because if I did Harata and I did Vidui and I went to the Beis HaMikdash and I brought a Korban and I did Shuv and I felt terrible about it.
Listen, in the Chumash, it tells you what to do, Ish Kichata. So it doesn't say anything about Yisurim. It says you did a chat, do Teshuva, say Vidui, bring a korban, presumably all with Kavanah Tova. So it doesn't say anything about Yisurim. Yisurim was a later introduction into Klal Yisrael, which came about. Chazal say, it's not some Rebbe or Rav saying, it's a Chazal say, Yisurim came about after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, and that's what we're all crying about on Teshuva. The Yisurim of the individual and the Yisurim of the world. That's like what like, okay, we don't have a Beis Hamikdash. Like, what are we getting all carried away about? The answer is we're getting so excited about is that look at the Yisurim that are going on in the world for so many people.
Yeah.
We have an answer now about the Feta Egel, why we're still paying for it?
So the reason we're still paying for it, because I was answering a different thing, that even if you get Mechila through Tshuva, we haven't necessarily accomplished the second part, which is Kapara. Everything that we're talking about today is not talking about Mechila. Mechila, Tshuva does Mechila. Slach lanu, mechal lanu. The Kaper lanu is further afield, Layalenu. As I say, like here, we're all tzaddikim, so we don't have to worry about this too much. And also I wanted to say, repeat one more time, that if you don't know the Oynish, like if you were in Amaretz and you don't know the Oynish, that's not called something that you need the Yom HaMisa to be mechaper. I mean, it's probably good to do tshuva anyway. But and also tshuva should be done, as Pinchas pointed out at the beginning, it could be the same day. Like when a person does an Aveir, you should do tshuva right away. Avoid the Yom Kippur rush. All right.
If I don't know
Rav,
if one
quick
doesn't know the Oynesh, then one isn't called Mazid.
If you don't know the Oynish, it's not called the Mesa.
How do you know that? I know Adim have to give Hasura with the Oynish itself, but it's not enough for me as a perpetrator to know that I'm doing something that has a sin, a punishment of death. I have to know specifically what death it is.
Yeah, by Karis, it's for sure true. It's a Gemara in Krisus. But just 1 second. One second, if you want to hang out for another minute. Just want to read you a paragraph that I just saw this morning. Not proving anything to you. I'm just reading a paragraph from Rav Moshe Sternbach, which is a halacha sefer on the Rambam. So he says over here, just find out what I saw before. Sorry, I missed that. Oh, B'dvareinu le'el, this is after saying a long shtickle Torah in the Rambam. He says, Nirali Chiddush Nifla, which Baruch Shekivanti to this important Chiddush, Matzanu Be'ezrus Hashem Yisparach Takana Laharbe Chayave Krisus Umisa B'dei Shamayim. You with me there, God? The Tshuva Halacha Meyisurim Kashim. Shebeparak Zayin the Shabbos Samach Tes Mavur in Parak Tes of in Samach Tes and Shabbos Mavur Shafilu Hazid Belav Im Shogeg B'Kares. Let's say you're amazing in the lav, but you were Shogeg in the Kares. Nikra Shogeg Umevi Carbon. Im Kain Hachanami Nema Shafilu Yada Sha'aser. Even if you knew it was Aser, Im La Yada Shachayavin Kares Dinai Kishogeg. Bein Baya Chumer de Yisurim. The Chayave Krisus to Avar B'Shogeg. Ubidvareno, and according to this, says Rav Moshe Sternbach, Takana Gedoyla L'Chayave Krisus Shechoyzerim B'Tshuva. Shem Yerachim. Shem Lo Yadu Shechayavin Kares Av Sheyadu Sha'aser. Ein Bo Chumras Tshuva Kechayave Krisus Shedinam Kishogeg.
Okay, what about Stam Misa? Being
So
amazing.
we have to explore what does it work for and what doesn't it work for, but it definitely works for
Kares, right?
Kares. That's a Meforshei Gemara in Shabbos. You're called the Shogeg. So shogeg, you've downgraded the whole thing, and you don't need discern for a shogeg. Bezras Hashem. So I mean, from my mouth to God's ears. All right. Have a good Shabbos. I just want to remind everybody that the Shiur on Shabbos afternoon is in Inyanim of Teshuva, but not these halachas, the bigger Inyanim of Teshuva. So if you come, but on the other hand, it'll complement it. So if you're coming to this, come to that if you can, if you're in the neighborhood. Yisrael, are you in the neighborhood?
Not yet.
Okay.
Rob, can I just ask one quick question?
Shabbos Mincha is at 5:15.
Can I ask a quick question?
5:15. Yeah, Chaim.
Hi. Where does Avram's conversation with Hashem about if we don't have the base of Mikdash, which he saw coming, that we will learn about Korbanos, what does that accomplish in the context of this conversation?
I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, they had
that we-
Korbanos without a base of Mikdash.
But I thought Avram was concerned that he knew the base of Mikdash should be destroyed. So he said, once it's going to be destroyed, and he said, if you just learn about the Korbanos, this is another Gemara.
Oh, well, you mean, what does it help to learn about Korbanos?
Like it's not it doesn't sound like it's a replacement, but where does it must do something. That's
Yeah. Probably does something. I
Oh, sorry.
always say B'Torah's Korbanos, Gilu Hikru Korban. Yeah, but it's a little bit of a cheap way out.
That's all we got.
All right, well, it was good for the meantime. All right, well, have a good Erev Shabbos.